The federal government of the United States has entered a new, precarious chapter, a shutdown now stretching into record territory, with no clear path to resolution but mounting pressure on all sides to deliver one. The standoff, driven by competing demands over funding and policy, has revealed not only the fault lines in Congress, but also the politics of leverage, public trust, and institutional breakdown. A shutdown unlike any other. Shutdowns are no longer something out of the blue. But this one is different. The familiar political gridlock has taken on a sharper edge, driven by bigger stakes, beyond mere funding delays. The Washington Post plus two. At its core, diverging visions for the size and role of government, allied with a fierce internal party debate on strategy. Republicans, led by the majority in the House and with strong influence in the Senate, are using the shutdown as bargaining leverage. Democrats, meanwhile, are balancing the damage of a prolonged closure against losing policy ground, especially around healthcare subsidies. The Washington Post +1. The stakes, lives, systems, and trust. As days without full funding accumulate, the tangible consequences multiply. Federal employees are furloughed or working without pay, contracts are delayed, services curtailed. The Washington Post +1. Premiums for health insurance purchased through the marketplace are set to spike unless key subsidies are extended, making the healthcare question central to the broader fight. The Washington Post. Congress's broader agenda, infrastructure, permitting reform, environmental policy, has stalled amid the shutdown of appropriations processes. E&E News by Politico. Underlying this is a trust problem. When one party refuses to act unless major policy demands are met, and the other refuses to concede, the machinery of governance grinds to a halt. The Washington Post +1. In short, this isn't just about stopping government operations for a few days. It is about who bears the pain, who gets the narrative, and whether institutional norms still hold. The endgame. Who will blink first? The big question now is, how will this end? Several factors shape the possible pathways. 1. Timing is critical. The shutdown has already broken records and threatens further damage to the public and to political reputations. E&E News by Politico +1. The longer drags on, the sharper the blowback. 2. A deal is in motion, but it's elusive. Senators from both parties are quietly negotiating, exploring a partial reopening of government with full-year appropriations for selected agencies, e.g., agriculture, military construction, as part of a package. E&E News by Politico +1. But major sticking points remain, especially around whether policy riders or guarantees will accompany the deal and the extent of healthcare subsidy extensions. 3. Democrats are divided. Within the Democratic caucus, some are ready to reopen the government first and push their demands later. Others insist on securing policy commitments before a funding deal. This internal divergence weakens their bargaining strength. E&E News by Politico +1. 4. Republicans hold structural leverage, but not unlimited. With control of the House and Senate, depending on the chamber, Republicans can drive the process. But if public sentiment turns sharply against them, and federal workers, service interruption, and health premium hikes are politically visible, the risk mounts. The question remains whether they are willing to bear that cost. 5. Public trust and political fallout loom large. For both parties, the potential electoral cost is real. A shutdown that drags on may harm whichever side appears unwilling to reopen government. For Democrats, the issue is being seen as prevented from pushing forward on protections. For Republicans, being seen as causing the gridlock. Polls and subsequent elections will reflect that. The Washington Post. Possible scenarios. Short-term fix plus deferred fight. Government reopens under a continuing resolution, key agencies funded, and the healthcare subsidy fight delayed for later. This is likely if both sides decide that the pain is too high. Comprehensive deal now, a single package that includes funding plus policy concessions, e.g., subsidies extension, to resolve the crisis. Less likely given the level of division and leverage. Prolonged stalemate. The shutdown drags on, services degrade further, public frustration intensifies, and both parties dig in. This is the worst-case scenario politically and operationally. What to watch? Will the Senate move forward with a procedural vote on a package in the next few days? ENE News by Politico +1. Will there be a clear pivot toward reopening from a critical mass of Democrats? Will healthcare subsidy extension become non-negotiable, or will it be decoupled from the funding deal? How will public sentiment evolve? Are voters attributing blame to one side or the other? What are the ripple effects? Federal services, financial markets, local economies, morale of federal workers. Why it matters. This shutdown is not just another budget fight. It's a test of institutional functionality in a highly polarized era. If government cannot be funded because of policy disputes over health care and workforce protection, it raises the question of whether the tools of governance are still adequate. Furthermore, the political playbook is evolving, leveraging shutdowns, mass firings of federal staff, and major policy demands are becoming terms of negotiation rather than last resorts. In effect, both parties are playing for more than just the next funding bill. They are playing for the shape of federal governance in years to come. Final word. We are at a pivot point. The endgame of this shutdown is not just about when the lights come back on. It is about who pays the cost, who wins the narrative, and what precedent is set for future budget and policy battles. The next few days will tell us whether the crisis collapses in on itself, is managed with a band-aid, or resolved with a bold deal that moves the ball forward. Parties, or map the specific legislative strategy that's emerging.